If this little nation goes down the drain and can't maintain her independence, ask yourself what's going to happen to all the other little nations.
If Kennedy thought he could finesse the Vietnam situation with special forces and assassins in the Phoenix program, LBJ's approach was brutally simple. He figured if he killed enough of them, they would cry uncle. The simplest way to kill them was with firepower.
We're off to bombing these people. They're over that hurdle. The game now is at the fourth quarter and about 78-0.
The primary tool that the U.S. used in the Vietnam War was aerial bombardment. That was how we killed the most people, both north and south. We used napalm, we used cluster bombs, we used white phosphorus, we used chemical agents, but most of all we used the old-fashioned high-explosive bombs. This was the greatest of our crimes against Vietnam. By the time it was all over, we had dropped 3 times the amount of bombs dropped by all parties in World War II. More than 8 million tons, or the equivalent of 640 Hiroshima-sized atomic bombs.
What do you think about it? I don't see why we bring Goldwater in on this. Why don't we just say I thought it appropriate just to communicate my decision to the Republican candidate president, not say he's assured me of his full support. I think it makes us sound like we're very much together and buddies and agreeing on bombing everybody.
The power system that fuels every war-making facility. The transportation system, rail, rolling stock, bridges, yards, eliminated. Every factory and every industrial installation, beginning with the biggest and the best, and never ending so long as our true bricks still stuck together. And if necessary, the irrigation system, on which food production largely depends. We must be willing to continue our bombing until we've destroyed every work of man in North Vietnam if this is what it takes to win the war.
Congress gave us this authority in August 1964. To do whatever may be necessary. That's pretty far-reaching. That's the sky's the limit.
When the war actually touched my life, the bomb was dropping in my house. And everything we have, all the memory from my grandmother, my grandfather, everything go up to smoke and turn to ashes. I was confused. Why are they burning down my house, my neighbor's house? It's very confused to me.
Mr. Rostow, I remember, had a theory, they call it surgical bombing. I heard him elaborate on this on various occasions.
My first impression on observing the areas that had been bombed was complete shock. I was extremely surprised at the area that we had actually hit. The fact that I could observe no military targets anywhere in the area.
The theory was that they were bombing only steel and concrete, that it was a surgical war, that they were, maintaining humanitarian standards. When I got over there, I found out that churches, schools, hospitals, houses, entire villages were being wiped out. People just discovered that the United States was fighting an entirely different kind of war than it claimed, and it was violating all of the international laws of war.
We always knew when they were about to drop their bombs. For example, in the morning, they usually arrived about 10 o'clock, just after breakfast. Then they took a break and went back to their bases for lunch. Then they came back to drop their bombs again at about 3 in the afternoon. Since this was the routine, we tailored our schedule accordingly. We began our surgery about 5 in the morning and took a break at 9 or 10.
It's either them or us, the way I feel about it. If the war wasn't being fought here, it'd be fought somewhere else.
You really think the bombs then are keeping the communists away? It is that important?
Well, I can't say it's keeping them away. It's keeping them beat back to where they should be.
Do you think it's effective?
Of course it's effective. Or they wouldn't be doing it.
For 10 years, the U.S. raided more than 19 million gallons of Agent Orange, which contains the lethal chemical dioxide, from Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. Not just jungles were sprayed. 3,181 villages and as many as 4 million people were also directly sprayed. This spraying continued long after the Vietnamese and American doctors began reporting the destructive effects on humans, and for nearly 2 years after the American scientists proved the connection to birth defects. And it wasn't just the infamous Agent Orange that was used. The Vietnamese had to suffer Agent White, Agent Purple, Agent Pink, Agent Blue, and Agent Green. A virtual rainbow of death was rained down on the Vietnamese. Rice was the specialty of Agent Blue because the sturdy Vietnamese rice proved resistant to many other herbicides. The purpose was to deny the Vietnamese food as well as the protection of the jungle from U.S. air assaults. This poison was produced by many major American corporations, including Dow, Monsanto, and Uniroyal. During the war, there were many protests against its production in the U.S. I am today very proud to say I went to jail in 1970 for my part in the sit-in against Dow. While hundreds of millions have been paid to the U.S. and other victims of Agent Orange by the U.S. government and the companies that made it, not one penny in compensation has been paid to the many victims of these war crimes, the Vietnamese. When Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld visited Vietnam in 2006, he again refused to consider the Vietnamese application for compensation, although he did demand they do more to find the last 40-year-old remains of American MIAs. The Vietnamese still have more than 300,000 MIAs of their own, not to mention thousands of little victims of Agent Orange born since the war. I don't think they have the time.